Hey, evening coaches. I know that many of us are busy preparing for tomorrow or potentially even in seating meetings right now, but I want to make sure I get out some of the points of emphasis that officials have been looking at leading into these next handful of days. So, some areas of focus, right, for the officials and for us to keep in mind as teams, right? Legal starting positions, reminders on illegal, potentially dangerous holds and maneuvers, stalling, technical violations or fleeing, stalemates, and just some general rules for the referees. So, again, legal starting positions, right? We know those, but just keep in mind or remind wrestlers of those things. In particular, making sure that you are not moving or touching the defensive wrestler when they are getting down, or some of the placement of the feet, along with that you have to have the palm loosely over the navel and the other palm, right, is on or over the back of the defensive wrestler's near elbow. Not that front drape or some of those pieces you see. Officials will be looking for that. Again, on our feet, most of us know this, but you have the different kind of legal starting positions. Remember that starting line kind of extends from each side, imaginarily, indefinitely. Both feet can be on that line, kind of in some weird positions. The one thing to watch out for is no part of your body touching the mat in front of the lead foot. We are seeing increase in wrestlers kind of putting their hand down there, stuff like that, sometimes even just touching and lifting it. That could lead to a caution. Just remind them on that. With potentially dangerous holds, remember the idea of that is anytime, right, that it is forced to the limit of the normal range of the movement of the body, it can be called potentially dangerous. Again, this is a judgment piece, or you're applying the hold and maneuver, right, which could be forcing it to go into an illegal position, or the offensive wrestler is forcing it in a way it can become illegal with that, right, and then become another offense off the penalty chart. So, making sure that if we're getting near that, or the officials communicating with your wrestler, that they're aware of that and making adjustments as needed. On the illegal move side of things, especially with hands to the face, it is illegal, and many refs will call that, even if it was not intentional. So it doesn't have to be, I was trying to Three Stooges poke somebody in the eyes, right? We're wrestling and my hands are to the face and I unintentionally get them in the eyes. That still could be called illegal. Again, that's a ref's discretion piece. The front quarter, the quarter Nelson, where you're catching the chin. Figure four around the body, the head, or around both legs. If you are just trying to punish with a move, and then the wing, in particular, where the pressure is straight towards the shoulder, are all things that can be illegal very quickly. That wing half situation is probably a pretty easy one, where your hand placement may not necessarily make it illegal, but your pressure placement could. Stalling, we know that we're both going to want and not want as coaches those stalling calls. The big piece for it is that each wrestler, right, is making an honest attempt to stay within the center of the mat, wrestle aggressively regardless of their position, the time, or the score of the match. Officials aren't supposed to adjust their calling of stalling because a kid is up or down by one for those different things, or any of that. Again, stalling is one of those judgment things, so be careful with how we're communicating that with officials. Let them officiate. It's not our job to yell stalling. That could sometimes get you in not the good graces of some officials. Fleeing the mat. This is, obviously always one that is very much so seen differently based on what lens you're looking through. For the most part, it is when you're going out of the wrestling area or forcing an opponent out of a wrestling area at any time, right, as a way of avoiding an imminent scoring situation. So that could be bottom person stood up and the top person runs them out of bounds. That could be, on your feet and somebody's kind of like diving out of bounds, or like clearly circling backwards out of bounds to avoid that. That is a technical violation for fleeing. We want both wrestlers to make every effort to remain in bounds. Based on the rules, there should not be a fleeing the mat call if near fall or takedown points have been awarded. So if it's off from a neutral position and your wrestler earns the takedown and they were potentially fleeing the mat, you don't get fleeing and a technical violation. Or if you are trying to work for a pin and your wrestler has earned the near fall points, in that situation, you really should not be getting the technical violation for fleeing and the near fall. It's the idea that you are fleeing when you are avoiding the scoring situation, not when it is happening. Stalemates. This changes over the course of the year, and we know that, where it's called a little quicker sometimes, or different grace is given, right? But that is whenever contestants are interlocked in a position other than a pinning situation in which neither wrestler is able to improve their respective positions. Okay. One of the other things they'll say, or if either competitor has their hands in particular locked around one leg in a manner to prevent another wrestler from scoring or scoring from happening. Right. So it could even be neutral, right? Wrestler A shoots on wrestler B. He's got that leg held in really tight. And he's really not trying to score or move, and wrestler B cannot get their leg free. That is not a situation that an official should be letting go for an extended period of time, as that is not working to score or things like that. Again, this is a judgment piece. Obviously, if you are the coach of the wrestler that's holding onto the leg, you're not going to see that as a stalemate as easily as the coach of the wrestler who kind of wants to get their leg free to score. And the official has a different lens than us as coaches. If you got a question on those things, I would just suggest asking for clarification as you are trying to figure out what is going on. Our officials and referees have a lot of different roles they have to do over the course of an event, from the pre-meet inspection to making sure the wrestling area is safe and enforcing the penalties for infractions. Unfortunately, a lot of times the roles that they take are not always happy-go-lucky roles with coaches or crowds. We should be doing our best to kind of help them out in that. We know to not have entire crowds of kids in the corner. We know to kind of have our kids ready for their matches and for inspections. And we also know that they are going to, call those penalties or those infractions, and how we react as coaches can often impact how our wrestlers react. So let's try to work with our officials as best we can. Last but not least, as a reminder, referees, you can have the greatest replay video in the world, and you can clearly show that you feel that a call or decision made, a referee completely kind of missed that, and you can see that, in 90K HD. They are not to use monitoring or replay or video equipment right now to help make decisions that are related to the match. That does include post-match also. If you're looking to do things, remember, you can grieve stuff that you feel is off or wrong, but grieving does not change a match. It only changes how things are applied moving forward. So be mindful of that. All right. Again, many of the calls that we as coaches don't like tend to fall in the category of judgment. And we may not like that judgment or agree with that judgment. Feel free to seek clarification wherever you need to, especially to kind of make it through the day, or that you think an official is seeing things differently, so you know how to prepare and coach your kids appropriately. There's nothing wrong with seeking clarification, but badgering an official over their judgment, or constantly kind of getting on them because you feel that judgment is wrong or not correct, is not our best way to move forward. It's not best for our kids. It's not best for our sport. Let's try to work with them, try to understand things better, and just have the best postseason that we can. I wish everybody the best of luck here, moving into the individual postseason, and our association is always here to help. If there's questions you have or things you need, please reach out to us, because we absolutely want to make sure that we are working with groups and helping to advance our sport.